Dollar. Dirt and money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yup, what's good, original crew, man? We're back today. Got another round from Trust Me, Bro. On today's video, we got the most wanted ever on the FBI most wanted list. How you feel about that list, C?
Okay, I mean, I don't know what the list is.
I don't know.
I wonder what these people want it for.
That's two. But hey, with that being said, before we get into it, make sure y'all check out the links in the description box.
Down below.
You already know where to go. If you want to first support, you got to do it. Check out down below. Also, if you enjoyed today's visuals,
like it with a thumbs up.
Man, let's hop into it. Let's check it out. Let's see what's about. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
The most notorious fugitives ever on the FBI's most wanted list. About a month ago, I made a video about the FBI's most wanted list, and in that video I said if you guys wanted a separate video about the most wanted criminals ever, I'd make it. And well, here we are. Today, we're discussing the most notorious criminals to ever be on the FBI's most wanted list. And as a fair warning, this video gets crazy, and you're definitely gonna recognize some names on this list. Let's get right into it. Thomas James Holden. I knew I had to put James at the very beginning of this list.
You don't know that name.
I don't ask where I know it from, but I do know this name.
She don't. You ain't gonna tell us where?
I literally said I don't know where I know it from, but I know the name.
Well, because it was symbolic. Thomas James Holden was the first criminal ever to be on the FBI's most wanted list, and is very likely one of the reasons why this list was even invented in the first place. Thomas was a career criminal and started his life of crime long before the FBI's most wanted list was even established. In 1926, James Holden and his partner, Francis Keating, led the Holden-Keating gang. This gang specifically specialized in committing robberies. And they weren't your old-timey purse snatcher. They were robbing banks, hijacking trucks full of money, and even held up trains, among other things. Although this gang's reign of terror didn't last long, as 2 years later, in 1928, Holden and his partner were sentenced to 25 years in prison. Although after only serving 2 years, he escaped from prison and immediately started a new gang, where once again, his career continued, and he was robbing trains, buses, and banks up until 1931 when he was captured again. After his capture in 1931, Holden served time in Alcatraz and was later paroled in 1947. But of course, that's not where the story ends. In 1949, 2 years after being released from prison, Holden murdered not only his wife, but also 2 of her relatives during a domestic dispute. After committing these murders, he fled the state, and it was this horrific crime that earned him a spot on the first ever FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, which was officially released a year later in 1950. Holden was caught only a year later in Oregon, working a normal job and using a fake name. And after his trial, he was convicted of murder later that year. Holden died only a few years later while in prison. James was undoubtedly a horrible person, but I find this story interesting because his life of crime started long before the FBI's most wanted list. And it was partly his actions along with the actions of other career criminals that inspired the FBI to make a most wanted list, to get support from the public. And immediately after this first list was published, its usefulness became instantly obvious, as it took less than a year for the FBI to find Holden after murdering his wife and 2 other men. So yeah, Holden was the first man ever on the FBI's most wanted list, and for that reason, I knew I had to put him on this list, and I figured, why not put him first? Quick note that this video is in no specific order. I'm not ranking these people. None of these criminals are better or worse than each other. I'm not going to incentivize that. These people don't deserve that. All of these people are horrible and have done horrible things. But yeah, let's keep going. Eric Rudolph. Eric Rudolph is a domestic terrorist, better known as the Olympic Park bomber. And he was responsible for numerous bombs.
Why you thought I didn't?
I was like,
yeah, you didn't know the first one.
Yes, I did. It was in another video we did.
I know you did.
and murders from 1996 to 1998, most notably including the bombing of Centennial Olympic Park during the 1996 Summer Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia. This bombing killed 2 people and injured over 100 others, and this was also the first of many bombings he committed. The other bombings he eventually confessed to make his motives rather clear, as he targeted and bombed 2 separate abortion clinics within Georgia, followed by bombing a lesbian bar, and then that bombing was followed by his final bombing, which was of another abortion clinic in Birmingham, Alabama. This final bombing killed a police officer and injured a nurse, among other people. Rudolph used homemade bombs that he filled with nails to maximize the damage, and he wanted to hurt people and send a message. Rudolph claimed to be against global socialism and abortion on demand, and he believed that the government was supporting both of these things. And during the 1996 Olympic Games, he saw these games as a promotion of global socialism, and he thought that the government supporting this was completely unacceptable. And because he was already upset that the US government was supporting abortion rights, he decided to go and hurt and kill innocent people. What a lunatic. In 2005, Rudolph pled guilty to multiple homicide charges and actually received 4 consecutive life sentences as a part of a plea bargain. Yeah, that was his plea deal, 4 consecutive life sentences. However, this plea bargain did allow him to avoid the death sentence, which, I mean, I'll let you form your opinion on how you feel about that. Regardless, he is currently incarcerated at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, and is also one of the most notorious criminals ever on the FBI's most wanted list. Ted Bundy. Bundy is a name that I would bet money you've heard before, and I've even talked about him numerous times on this channel, so I'm going to keep this segment a bit brief. But I did want to toss out Ted Bundy early in this list because I figured some of you guys would be looking for names you'd recognize, so here's one. And don't worry, there's more later in the list you'll definitely recognize. Back to Ted. Ted is undoubtedly one of the most notorious serial killers of all time, and also one of the most notorious people to ever be on the FBI's most wanted list. Bundy is responsible for the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of at least 30 young women and girls during the 1970s, and his crimes happened all across the United States of America. Bundy's typical methods of luring his victim would be by pretending to be injured or disabled, or by pretending to be an authority figure, such as a police officer. And typically what he would do once he has people's attention and trust is he would lure these young women to his car under the guise of requiring some help putting something in the trunk, typically. At that point, he would bludgeon these women unconscious and then put them in his vehicle, and then what he did from that point is just diabolical. And it's very likely you already know what he was up to. Not only would he sexually assault and kill these women, but he would also sexually assault their dead bodies and even mutilate them, keeping parts of these bodies as trophies. And that's really only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to his depravity. Bundy was actually caught and escaped from prison twice, and on his 3rd time in prison, he was eventually given the death penalty, where he was executed in 1989, ending his reign of terror. And if you're curious about exactly how Ted Bundy got caught, check out this video on screen after this video. I'll link it in the description for you. It's a video where I describe how the most infamous serial killers got caught. So yeah, Ted Bundy is not only one of the most notorious people ever on the FBI's most wanted list, he's also one of the most notorious serial killers and criminals of all time. And if you are familiar with his story, it's rather unfortunate how he was able to get away with his horrific acts for so long. But that's a story for a different video, and I have...
Did you ever watch the Ted Bundy little series that what's his name, Zac Efron did? I did, but I was just like, personally, I ain't really care for it, but I did. I watched some of it, and I was like, all right, I tuned out. Like, the Ted Bundy story has been told, but, like, a depiction of it is another thing. You get what I mean?
I have videos on my channel where I go into detail about that. Check out the serial killer series on this channel if you're interested. Let's keep moving. Victor Manuel Hardena. Victor is a notorious entry on the FBI's most wanted list for a few reasons. Firstly, because he was on the list for the longest time ever. Like, more than anybody. Like, nobody spent more time than him on the list. So I'm assuming he was pretty good at hide and seek as a kid. But seriously, jokes aside, he spent over 32 years on the list as a most wanted fugitive and was not captured ever. The only reason that he was removed from the list on December 15th, 2016 is more or less because he no longer met the requirements, which really means they decided that other criminals were more worth pursuing and having on the list. Victor was officially added to the list on May 14th, 1984, and the reason that he was added to this list was for a crime that also makes him a notable entry on the FBI's most wanted list as a whole, because he is associated with one of the largest cash robberies in US history. On September 12th, 1983, while working for Wells Fargo, Victor plotted and conducted a theft of over $7 million cash from a Wells Fargo armored car facility in Connecticut, which is just an absolutely insane feat. And adjusted for inflation, it only gets crazier. In today's money, he stole the equivalent of roughly $19 million cash. After this robbery, it is believed that he was smuggled to Mexico, and it is believed that he is now somewhere in Cuba. So yeah, Victor is on this list for a few reasons. The insane heist he pulled off, the fact that he was able to not only escape the police but also the country,
Facts.
and the fact that he was able to not be caught for over 32 years while being a most wanted criminal is absolutely insane.
Facts.
It's a bit of a nice palate cleanse to be able to discuss a bank robbery instead of some of the other things we've discussed and will continue to discuss, because unsurprisingly, the most wanted of the most wanted are a depraved bunch. And with that, let's get to our next entry.
But the amount he stole, though, was able to get away with? Man. Oh, who would have?
Where did he go afterwards?
That's a good question. What would you...
I don't know.
Ramsey Ysef. I would assume everybody watching this video is familiar with the terrorist attack that took place on September 11th. However, that wasn't the only attack that took place in the World Trade Center. In 1993, a terrorist attack masterminded by Ramsey Ysef took place in the World Trade Center, and it claimed the life of 6 innocent people and injured over 1,000 others. Hours after the attack, Ramsey fled the country, and for that reason, he was put on the FBI's most wanted list. While on the run and on the most wanted list, he also essentially co-founded the Pachinko plot, which was an elaborate scheme to carry out multiple large-scale attacks and create essentially global terror. The Pachinko plot, simply put, was a plan to kill the Pope as a distraction, and then while people were distracted by the murder of the Pope, 11 planes on the way to the USA would be hijacked and bombed. Which is an absolutely insane thing to consider, that this was a serious plan that people were putting money, energy, and effort towards. Fortunately, this plan failed, and in 1995, Ramsey was arrested in Pakistan while he was attempting to put a bomb in a toy doll. At this point, after his capture, he was extradited back to the United States. Ramsey, along with 2 of his co-conspirators, were convicted for their roles in the 1993 bombing and the Pachinko plot. And Ramsey specifically received 2 life sentences plus 240 years for his involvement in these acts of terror. The story ends there, but I do have a few interesting facts. One of Ysef's uncles is actually credited as one of the principal architects behind the September 11th attacks. And Ysef is currently behind bars at the same prison that Eric Rudolph is at, the ADX Florence in Colorado. Also, interestingly, this is the same facility where Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was also held. But I guess it makes sense. These are all extremely dangerous people. Raphael Caro Quintero. During the time that Raphael was on the FBI's most wanted list, he was actually the record holder for the highest reward offered by the FBI for information. That reward being $20 million, which now is a bit more common and that record has been broken, but at the time, the FBI was not messing around and they wanted this guy. For good reason too, as Raphael is one of the most notorious Mexican drug lords of all time.
Is that tax-free? I mean, shit. But you know, he must be cartel, so you know what mess with the cartel?
You said what?
I said he must be a part of the cartel.
And then what you say?
I said, you know what happens when you mess with the cartel?
Oh.
That makes sure you can't never tell no more.
That would have been... Hello?
No, you wasn't. Because even if you knew where he was, you weren't going to tell.
Yeah.
You know how many people be knowing what these folks said, but don't say a word?
Like, don't tempt me.
They ain't tipping you.
And is the co-founder of the Guadalajara cartel, one of the earliest and most powerful drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. Raphael was a kingpin in the drug trade during its boom in the 1980s, known mostly for his brutal tactics and massive influence and power. Raphael is most infamous for his involvement in the 1985 kidnapping and murder of a DEA agent. And this specific murder severely strained the relationship between the US and Mexico. Fortunately, Raphael was caught and was sentenced to 40 years in prison, but unfortunately, he was actually released early in 2013 due to a legal technicality. That being that a lawyer argued that his trial should have been at the state level and not the federal level. And I suppose that was enough to have him released from jail, which is insane. When news broke that this drug lord who killed an American official was released from jail, all hell broke loose. And only days after his release, the Mexican and American governments put him back on the most wanted list. However, it did take them 9 years to catch him again. And from 2013 to 2022, he was a free man until he was once again captured by Mexican authorities in 2022 and was extradited back to the United States to stand trial, specifically for drug trafficking charges. Raphael's full story and list of crimes goes far beyond the scope of this video, but trust me when I say, not only did his story at the time make headlines, but he is also definitely one of the most dangerous and notorious entries ever on the FBI's most wanted list. Simeon McGillovich.
Is that not crazy though?
Crazy.
Bro, y'all let this fool go. They said, oh, we need you back. Like he just like I would have got skedaddle for real.
Where you going?
Any country that don't do extradition. Bali. Seems like a lot of people going over there that can't come back home.
Seems like.
Bitch. McGillovich is another criminal we've actually talked about on the channel before. And if you've seen that video, then you would know that McGillovich is known as the boss of bosses, or the most powerful and dangerous gangster in the world. A pretty crazy title, but his crime resume definitely backs it up. Keep in mind, that's not a name he gave himself. That name was given to him by the FBI. Simeon is alleged to have built a vast criminal empire with involvement in every illicit activity you can think of, including extortion, money laundering, drug trafficking, human trafficking, weapons trafficking, murder for hire, fraud, and much more. One of his most notable accusations is his multi-million-dollar stock scheme he actually performed in Canada, where him and a group of associates were able to scam over $150 million out of investors by essentially having a fake company listed on the TSX, the Toronto Stock Exchange. McGillovich is considered to be the most dangerous and most powerful criminal because his power comes from the sheer power of his network. Not only is he himself...
I need to get him as a contact.
Yeah, you gonna be locked right on up.
Just need some, give me some stock advice.
He probably ain't got none.
Put in all of my company.
An educated and well-connected and rich person, but he is also connected to every rich crime boss globally, making his influence extremely dangerous and extremely powerful, which is why in 2009 they put him on their list. However, in 2015 he was actually removed from the list as there is no extradition treaty between the US and Russia, meaning that Russia has no incentive to send this criminal to the States. And for that reason, the FBI thought it made sense to put somebody else on the list that they had a better chance of getting. Although that doesn't mean that he's any less wanted or any less dangerous. Although, as of now, he is still a free man. James Earl Ray.
I need to make that phone call. I ain't got no information for you, so don't ask me. But you help me I'll help you make some more money.
I know about James Earl.
Duh, we all know about James Earl.
I knew about the first one.
Why you know about James Earl?
I can't remember. I know his name. And I remember his face. So I remember them ears.
I ain't pressing play until you learn. Tell us why.
Learn or to
till you tell
remember which I would have.
Till you tell
What
us.
the hell is happening?
Until you tell us how you know James Earl Ray.
I can't.
Which should be easy as hell.
James Earl Ray. If it's easy for you because
no,
you
it's easy for everyone.
Remember. I need something to trigger my memory, and it's not enough.
The name.
James Earl Ray.
Wow, that's the only hint I'm gonna give you.
Like a sniper or something. Oh, James Earl Ray. He took out. What is it called when you
starts with an A.
Assassinate. He assassinated. Is this the one that assassinated Kennedy?
Are you going with Kennedy?
No, it's not Kennedy, is it?
The infamy and story of this individual is likely the most interesting and twisted by far.
Oh, no.
James Earl Ray was a small-time criminal who was arrested and eventually escaped from jail. And a year after escaping from jail, he allegedally assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1960.
I didn't know it was Martin Luther King, because we just heard it in another video. Because both of them was in the same video. They was talking about Martin Luther King, it was talking about Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln, all them. And it was all in the same video. So it just kind of got a little, all...
Girl, you been there. You should know that. You did y'all go outside where he was?
We went everywhere, yeah.
I'm saying, did y'all go outside on
Yes, we went everywhere.
You told me y'all never went to and saw like his room set up.
I told you that, but we went everywhere else. And was that going to help me remember James Earl Ray's name? If not, then what relevance does this have?
Because everybody back home know about James Earl Ray.
Yeah, I know.
Especially if we went to the museum.
Yeah, I know.
You stood on the same platform. You could point the same way.
I think it's kind of fucked up that you sitting here knowing that I don't have any memory of a lot of things. And
how's that? What you said, you supposed to be stop cursing.
I am trying to stop cursing, but you triggering me. You pissing me off. But I knew his name.
And I know you knew it.
And I know I knew it. I mean, I knew that I knew. I knew that I knew who he was, but I just couldn't remember. But yes, Martin Luther King.
jail, he allegedly assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. Following this assassination, Ray fled the United States, got a Canadian passport, and then traveled to London where he was recognized and caught. And the following year, he pled guilty to the crime and was sentenced to 99 years. Now that is a very simple story, but that's where the lines begin to get blurred. Because although assassinating one of the most famous civil rights leaders of all time is definitely going to earn you a spot on this list, that's not quite what everybody believes. In 1977, Ray actually escaped from prison again, and this second escape from prison would put him back on the FBI's
Did you know that?
Of course not. I didn't know that part, no.
I didn't.
most wanted list. I kind of forgot to mention, but the first time he was put on the FBI's most wanted list was after his alleged assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Regardless, after escaping from jail for a second time, he was caught after a 54-hour manhunt. Now, interestingly, after being re-caught and re-put in prison, Ray began to renounce his guilt, essentially saying the confession I gave before wasn't true and I actually didn't do it. Now, this raised a lot of questions because at the time, and even to this day, people theorized that the death of Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't by some small-time criminal, but potentially by the government. Unfortunately, Ray never had any evidence to present that he wasn't guilty and that the government was. Most interestingly is that MLK Jr.'s family believe that Ray is not the killer, and they supported his motion to have a retrial and are very vocal about the fact that they believe that it was a government conspiracy. However, no matter
what if it could possibly be, if you want to believe in that conspiracy, the government could have still had helped them, quote unquote, escape the first time to carry out the, you know what I'm saying? You can believe in that conspiracy, right? The government could have utilized him to commit the crime. You never know.
No matter how you feel about it, the judge, the government, the FBI ultimately decided that this was definitely Earl James Ray, and the case at that point was closed. Was James Earl Ray framed, or was he the assassin? I don't have an opinion on this yet, but I'm curious to know what you guys think. So yeah, James Earl Ray is one of the most notorious people on the list for allegedly assassinating one of the most famous figures in political history, and also for the conspiracy surrounding his alleged involvement. Crazy stuff, but we still got two more to cover. William Bradford Bishop Jr. Bishop had a seemingly perfect life. He graduated from Yale, worked as a U.S. Foreign Service officer, married his high school sweetheart, and had 3 sons with the love of his life. Now, obviously, you don't end up on this list for having a picture-perfect life. As the story goes, Bishop was denied a promotion at his job, and for that reason, he left work, withdrew a large amount of cash from the bank, purchased a ball-peen hammer, a gas can, and other supplies, went home, and then allegedly murdered his entire family, including his wife, his own mother, and his 3 sons. He then transported their bodies to North Carolina, where he buried them in a shallow grave and set them on fire, and then left the scene. Bishop's car was later found abandoned in Tennessee's Great Smoky Mountains National Park near the Appalachian Trail, where his car, full of personal items, linked him directly to the murders. However, despite multiple sightings in the US and even in Europe, Bishop has been able to evade capture ever since these murders took place. It is suggested he has done so because he is fluent in 5 languages, is an experienced outdoorsman, and his skills and background with his job made him particularly elusive. Although these murders of his entire family took place in the 70s, it wasn't until 2014 when he was added onto the list. And only 4 years later, in 2018, he was then removed from the list because the FBI stated
He surely's an ugly motherfucker, ain't
He looked familiar.
he just look weird. See, which one you talking about? That one? Yeah, he just look. He look
I
weird.
seen him around.
No, he just an ugly motherfucker.
I done seen that man before.
and only 4 years later, in 2018, he was then removed from the list because the FBI stated that they wanted to focus on more recent cases. But that doesn't mean that they aren't still searching for him, but they're just not prioritizing this one to get the most wanted list exposure. To this day, Bishop could still be alive, and at this point would be 89 years old. And it is rather unfortunate how he was never able to be brought to justice, and I find it a bit odd that he was added to the most wanted list so far after he committed such heinous activities and essentially got away with it. But regardless of timeliness, he was an entry on the FBI's most wanted list, and a very notorious one at that. Now, let's get into the final entry on this list. Osama Bin Laden. While this video isn't in any particular ranking, I figured it made sense to put Osama last, as he is likely by far the most recognizable person on this entire list. Osama definitely didn't need the help of the FBI's most wanted list to gain notoriety, although it did help bring awareness about this terrifying individual. Osama Bin Laden is the founder of Al-Qaeda, a militant organization responsible for numerous terrorist attacks, most famously including the September 11th attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people. And while that attack is how most people are aware of Osama Bin Laden, his criminal history and even his time spent on the FBI's most wanted list far predate the September 11th attacks. Osama was actually on the FBI's most wanted list as early as 1993, mostly because of his involvement in Al-Qaeda and the numerous terror attacks that they were committing, one of which being the Mogadishu bombing, in which Somali rebels trained by Bin Laden and his partners killed 18 American servicemen. That same year, Osama was also tied to the first attack on the World Trade Center, the one that we discussed previously that was primarily masterminded by Ysef. His ties to that attack and the Mogadishu bombing were more than enough to land him a spot on the most wanted list. But that's obviously not where the story ends. 2 years later, in 1995, he attempted to have the Egyptian president murdered, and in 1996, he bombed the US Air Force complex in Saudi Arabia. And then in 1998, over 200 people died as a result of bombings in the US embassies in both Kenya and Tanzania, both of which Al-Qaeda took credit for, which means that they were directly linked to Bin Laden himself. And of course, most famously, on September 11th, 2001, Bin Laden was tied to an attack that not only made him one of the most wanted people by the FBI, but one of the most wanted and most known criminals in the entire world. And following that attack, the FBI put a $25 million reward on any information that would lead to the capture of Osama. From 2001 until 2011, Osama was able to live freely, although in hiding, until May 1st of 2011, when SEAL Team 6 stormed his compound and ended his reign of terror for good. Osama Bin Laden was on this list for nearly 2 decades and is likely responsible for more deaths than anybody else on this list, and is not only one of the most notorious people to ever be on the FBI's most wanted list, but one of the most notorious criminals and terrorists of all time. A truly evil individual. And ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. A list of 10 of the most notorious fugitives to ever be put on the FBI's most wanted list. From 1950 to 2025, these are 10 people that the FBI definitely won't be forgetting anytime soon. Fortunately, most of these criminals were brought to justice, and for the few that haven't, hopefully justice is served sooner rather than later. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you guys like this video about the
Yeah. Some new names.
Yeah.
The William Bishop. I'm surprised he got away for that long. The Boss of Bosses. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, for sure.
I say half of them we already knew about. The other half probably new. Oh, see, funny, y'all. Hey, y'all smell what's up in the comments, man. Let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comment section down below. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid. This is
Sierra Nicole.
We Are. We Are.
Go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack of flip for my folks. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back.